Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's segment here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse. I am your show host, Megan Young Gamble, and Chief Project Officer at GLC, Packaging and Project Execution Team for Health, Beauty, and Wellness Brands. And happy 2026, ladies and gentlemen, listeners and viewers. I'm so excited and we're truly blessed to be able to make it to this side of the new year. And, as it's the new year, everybody always talks about new year, new me, new attitude, new goals, all the things, right? However, respectfully for the podcast, it's a new year, but it's the same impact that we're delivering, which is delivering consistent, highly focused industry content that will help you all make quicker decisions and give you greater impact in the marketplace. And so that's the reason for the Product and Packaging Powerhouse. And so if this is your first time here rocking with me, welcome to the house and Happy New Year to you. I'm glad that you found us on your respective streaming platform and you rock with us. So to make sure you don't miss any new episodes that we do drop, hit that bell notification or that subscribe button, depending upon your platform that you prefer to listen to. And you can also check us out on YouTube as well. So just make sure you're following us on all platforms. All the links are down in the show notes. Now, if you've been rocking with us for quite some time, welcome back to the house. As we've been having these conversations and interviews with other industry powerhouses and some of my solo episodes, you know that I'm always going to tell you the real deal. And it's very authentic for this conversation and all conversations I really have, to be honest. I believe in not giving fluff. I really believe in just giving straight facts. And also, you see my personality come out, and I'm going to tell you about if I'm vibing with something, if I'm not vibing with something, and my personal anecdotes around certain aspects as well. And so, as we're kicking off the new year, it's the same, I would say it's the same me, coming into the new year. And I'm still figuring things out postpartum. So I'm now like about 10 months postpartum at the time of this recording. And I'm still figuring out things. And of course, I can say I have new goals, body goals, and new hair goals, which I do have new hair goals because my hair is now starting to regrow back thanks to some phenomenal products that I'm using, which I'll talk about on a separate episode coming up soon. But nevertheless, there's not really any change for me. And I think coming into this new year, I'm really being focused to steward the gifts and talents that I've been given and really just hone in on those. And so I'm really excited about coming into this new year as, a recovering postpartum mom, as a businesswoman, reanalyzing the way we do business, as the show host for this product and packaging powerhouse podcast, to the impact that we do continuously deliver to the clients we work with on the GLC side. It's a lot of things. However, I'm truly honored and grateful that I'm here with you all and I'm able to continue to do what I truly enjoy and love in this industry. And so as we're kicking off the new year, there are some new trends that we're going to be highlighting for today. So if you have not done so, make sure you do follow, like, and subscribe to our channels and share this with your network as well, because with these trends I'm going to be sharing, this is respectfully in the beauty industry and then also the packaging industry that does complement beauty and personal care industry as well. And some things that I'm seeing, in my own personal thoughts as we're coming into this new year. So make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new content that we drop, and then also sharing this with your network. And so a couple things I want to mention before we get into looking at the current year, 2026, is kind of recapping 2025. So down in the show notes, I included some links for you all to check out what we saw in 2025. And the couple things I want to highlight very quickly is, according to the State of Beauty 2025 preview report, the global beauty market grew 10% in the last 12 months. And that is significant growth that we're seeing, even considering inflation, tariff costs, and more, that has impacted the way consumers purchase goods. However, the beauty industry clearly has not been impacted because we still have everybody buying their favorite products and more. And so with that, here in North America, the beauty e-commerce uh, side has risen 21%, growing 9 times faster than in-store traffic. And so that goes to show you that, which we'll talk about, like the power of online marketing, e-commerce, and also how you resonate with those end consumers, leveraging your social media platforms. And then last but not least, wellness and ritual practices expanded the beauty opportunity space by 64% as self-care moves beyond appearance. And so we've been into the self-care movement really since the pandemic. So starting in 2020, when we all know what happened during the time. We all were at home, figuring out what to do, trying to maintain our own sanity, seeing the news, seeing what's going on in the news, seeing, hearing about unfortunate deaths happening, the vaccinations, shutdowns, all the things. We all remember those days. And so self-care has really been instrumental during that time frame, and it continues to do so because now in a post-pandemic world, under current presidential administration, considering inflation, you need something to help with self-care because there's a lot of stuff happening in today's climate, and quite frankly it's overwhelming. So you need something that's going to help keep you centered, help with your self-care, so it can help you with your mental sanity as well. And so with that being mentioned, that we saw with the State of Beauty report in 2025, check out the links down below of the recaps for beauty and packaging in 2025, because I want to go straight into the top trends that we're seeing respectfully in 2026. So this is going to be two sections that I'm going to be focusing on, which is top trends in the beauty industry, top trends respectfully to packaging in the beauty and personal care space. Okay. So, one of the trends we're seeing respectfully in the beauty industry is the rise of the health first beauty. So, this corresponds to what we saw with the recap of the State of Beauty report in 2025. And so, the rise of the health first beauty is really about beauty evolving to more of a holistic lifestyle category. So, more brands within skincare, hair care, fragrance, they're not just looking at the cosmetic fixes. They're looking at the overall components of health and well being. And so this really resonates because it's starting to shift, it's really to reflect on the consumer's interest in self care, body awareness, and also long term wellness. And so we do see some trends that are showcasing that it's going to be a highlight or influx or wave of products that will be combining aesthetics with health oriented benefits. And so that's something that we're going to continuously see. And I feel like it's only going to keep increasing as we're looking at this. And so one of the things I think about, for health first beauty is within hair care, respectfully, is scalp care. And it's funny because growing up, especially like in Black American hair culture, like we have always been big about our scalps, right? And the different practices that we would actually go through to help make sure that our scalp was clean. That was something that was heavily preached to us growing up. And so, to now see it 30 years later to be its own category and to be well known more on a global level, is something that it goes to show you like things have always been done, but sometimes it takes time for it to be really recognized on a global level. And so that's just one instance of a health first beauty routine that's really incorporating holistic lifestyle practices and self care and body care into those practices. So we're going to continue to see this. And I don't think that we're going to see any slowdown in that regard for this trend. So the next trend is AI and hyper personalization. So personalization has been a topic of conversation for the past couple of years, respectfully, in the beauty space. How you can personalize or curate your own type of products using AI and more. And also the type of products that are selected for you depend upon, what type of marketplace that you're using to actually get a subscription box and more. And so we've seen personalization before, but now we're heavily utilizing AI into this to have that more hyper personalization at scale is really driving the experience. And so research shows that personalization significantly boosts loyalty and repeat purchases, with shoppers preferring brands that offer product recommendation quizzes, virtual try-ons, or AI driven skin analysis. And we're seeing a lot more consumers Googling AI skin analysis. So you have Cetaphil, you have a lot of retailers like Ulta Beauty, JCPenney's, et cetera, that are incorporating AI and AR tools. You even have pros and pure beauty culture that are creating custom formulas based upon your assessments and the quizzes that you take to help curate that custom formula for your respective hair type based upon your needs, geographic location, et cetera. And like with Cetaphil, like I've actually done their skin analysis online to see like where are the dry spots and where certain areas of my skin needs more hydration and moisturization. Hydration and moisturization are different, so we're seeing more of this being incorporated and also being searched by the consumers. And so that also leads me to recommend, for indie brands, startup brands, or really any scale of brand, if you have not incorporated this type of tool to help with the personalization and resonate where the current time is now, there are some great resources. I highlighted in one of my prior episodes inside of Makeup in New York, where I actually had an opportunity to try out Arabelle. They are an AI platform respectfully in the beauty space. Backrolar Studio, they are an innovation studio that helps integrate into different brands, portfolios, and products to offer AI and AR capabilities. And there are countless others, but those are two that do come to mind since I did have an opportunity to see their platforms and to speak with the team members as well on each of those platforms to see how it's incorporated and the benefits of it. So definitely check them out and see how you can incorporate AI and also hyper personalization capabilities into your brand and also your strategy. And so next thing that we're seeing, and this goes back to, the recap I mentioned earlier at the segment in reference to the state of beauty, which is the digital and social commerce continues to dominate retail strategy. And so, as we all know, everything is quickly accessible through our phones, through most smart devices, or even on our desktop, laptops, etc., where we can buy any product that we want just like that. Amazon, like they are the game changers. Y'all remember the one-click purchase, like the Amazon would incorporate like years ago, and now you have a lot of other brands that you can see an icon be displayed or the product be displayed and you can automatically add it into the cart without having to click on it, view the details. If you don't want to, you can just click it, add it to your cart, that one click purchase. And so consumers are still really heavily relying on digital and social e-commerce platforms. And so according to Nielsen IQ, global beauty continues to see strong growth with digital channels outpacing physical retail by wide margins. And so with social platforms like TikTok and Instagram, they're really the major drivers within the beauty space. And so half of those users are expected to make at least one social commerce purchase. And the average shopper will spend approximately $800 annually at the end of 2025 just based upon what they see on social platforms. So when you hear this, that lets you know that e-commerce is here to stay. And while we are still having more foot traffic go back into the physical locations, to actually touch, feel, play, and actually see products and packaging displayed on the shelves, we are still relying heavily on the digital space as well to purchase the products and the convenience of it. I do a lot of things, purchasing a lot of things online for the sheer convenience. Because as I mentioned, I still have a little one, Amaya, my co-host. Amaya is moving around too much, but she has some great commentary. So you may hear her in the background of this episode as well. But she's not one to still for us to sit and do a recording right now. But when she does, she's gonna be back present to be sitting with mommy for these recordings. Um, and I miss my girl being on camera with me, but nevertheless, we'll be back. Um, but anyways, so as part of that, we are having more foot traffic go back into the physical locations. However, for the sheer convenience of being able to go to your phone, click, add it to the cart, purchase it, and you with all these different payment plan options through Klarna, Affirm, Shop Pay, all these different modalities for you to pay and get your products, like it's just brilliant, So we're going to continue to see that e-commerce continuously soar in the space, even though retail is getting more foot traffic and more traction, and sales are increasing in that space as well. So I'm curious to know from your perspective as a consumer, are you leveraging digital and social media to help you with purchasing select products, whether for yourself, for a friend, for a family member, for a loved one, or whomever you decide? Are you leveraging it? And if so, reply back and let us know your thoughts and how you're leveraging digital and social platforms to help you make your purchasing decisions. Okay, so moving on to the next trend that we're seeing in the beauty space is biotech innovations with the focus of sustainability. So I've known about biotech since I was in college. I did a internship, a biotechnology internship in India, and I really was on the food side where I looked at genetically modified organisms, GMO, within the food space when I was in India. So I'm familiar with biotechnology, and so to see the evolution of biotech come into the beauty space and become more of a now trend, I'm saying that in quotes, when it's always been around, is something that lets you know that consumers are really driving the interest. And so biotechnology is reshaping sustainable beauty by enabling lab made ingredients that mimic natural processes without the environmental impact of traditional sourcing. So, with a lot more interest around sustainable beauty, which has risen over 200% since 2019, brands are exploring biotech to reduce dependence on land, water, and petroleum based ingredients. And so, there are countless brands that are already using biotechnology ingredients and also looking at how it's sustainable, as well as part of their sustainable initiatives, because sustainability means something different to everybody. If you've heard me from prior segments, I always say sustainability could be based upon the ingredients. It could be sustainable packaging. It could be sustainable operations. It can be sustainable governance that you have in place, or for your company. It can be so many different pillars of sustainability. And for my startup brands, I always tell them focus on one sustainability initiative at a time, instead of trying to do all sustainability initiatives at once and trying to mimic what larger scale brands or conglomerate brands are doing, because then they'll fall flat on their face, just being honest. And we don't want that, right? Because we're seeing an influx of of, we're seeing an influx of indie brands and growing brands come to market. And they're really driving this space too. I mean, if you did not know, 98% of businesses are considered startup small businesses, here in North America. So we heavily rely on indie and startup brands significantly for that space. And so, speaking of the indie brands, that leads me to our next trend that we're seeing respectfully in beauty, which is niche, indie, and personalized beauty. So, from mass market to micro segments. So, everybody knows about the big global brands and the conglomerate brands, which are fantastic. However, according to 2025 trend reports around personalization, inclusivity, and diversity, to help with to help with driving your purchase decision, a lot broader beauty are really looking at how to differentiate themselves from the big global brands. And so now we're wanting to see more targeted needs that's more niche focused. That goes back to the first point that I mentioned, that the rise in the health first beauty segment, you know, or how we can have more hyper targeted offerings. And that's where you really get into the startup and the niche growing brands that are really focusing on those things. They're looking at what is currently in the marketplace, where is there a gap or white space, and based upon their respective category, respectfully in beauty, if it's in skincare, hair care, nail care, color cosmetics, etc., where is a product that still has a area of opportunity to refine and offer something that is more hyper targeted. And going back to the second point I mentioned earlier, the hyper personalization aspect of it. So personalization is here to stay. And to be honest, we are at the time now where our money is different. Our skin changes based upon the climates and where we're geographically located. We Some of us are having more stress, due to various reasons, and so higher cortisol, and that also impacts how it comes out outwardly through our skin. To managing, family dynamics, personal dynamics, growing in careers, and all the things. So we all have something different, and all products are not suited for all of us and does not accommodate all of our needs. And so having that niche or that personalized beauty focus that really is for the startup brands and growing brands, because they're filling in that white space, is going to continue growing. And that goes back to all the other affirmation points I mentioned that were for the trends that we're seeing respectfully in the beauty space. So this is something very profound and things that makes us go, just pause and be like, what have we been seeing that is continuously the trend? And the personalization from the trends I just mentioned, and also just thinking about the prior years as well, because I've had the podcast now for 2 years at this time. It'll be 3 years come August 2026. And personalization has always been the one thing that has been consistent within the beauty realm. So whether it is personalization around packaging, personalization around the ingredients, personalization around using AI, personalization around, incorporating AR, augmented reality, and more. So personalization is here to stay, and it's a consistent theme that we're seeing across the beauty landscape. So whether it's in the US, Latin America, Canada, EU, UK, we're seeing it on a global scale. So that is not going to change. So my recommendation is for you all, if you're thinking about how to incorporate personalization within your brand, I recommend really gathering a group of stakeholders to serve as like an advisor for your brand and help give you some insight or some advice on what to consider for your brand. Now, for those startup brands that I'm recommending for this service, or really any scale brand, I'm not going to just say it's for startup brands, but for any scale of brand that is looking to bring stakeholders on as an advisor, there could be an associated investment for that. So, but it is so worth to have that investment to invest into having that stakeholder team that is unbiased, not really, they're very unbiased, in reference of their approach and offerings and their advice. So that way it can help determine what is personalization for your brand, just like sustainability and what this means. And then also how it's going to impact the end consumer. And so that would be my recommendation. Now, if you are a startup brand who may be more cost conscious and you're trying to consider how to incorporate personalization into your brand, look and invest into systems. That may be your starting point. I always recommend startup brands to, see what makes sense for their brand and to do things right. So at the end of the day, the first resource that should always be part of a startup brand's team is regulatory. I do have regulatory specialists that are part of my team. So inquire with us about how we can help make sure your product is compliant first and foremost, because we do not want you to be making claims around products that are personalized or have a personalization element, but they're not compliant. Because we have a lot of things that have rolled out in reference of MoCRA here in the USA, with updates being made from FDA. And we're not even tackling other countries. We're only talking about just here in the US. So there's a lot of things that we want to consider and make sure that you are compliant for. So that's first. Second thing I would recommend for startup brands is for you to conduct a focus group. So that way you can gather unbiased feedback on your products to then determine if you are filling that white space or what is the next iteration, depending upon the investment that's required to incorporate those certain elements or those certain ingredients or the certain performance that you want of your intended product. Because it could be, it could be different iterations that you launch for a product. And a lot of big brands, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just going to put it out there. A lot of big brands, they don't disclose that. However, they're going through multiple iterations of their formulas or products simultaneously because of different ingredients. One, the different outcome of the performance, one's different viscosity of the product. It could be various things that are having to be considered. So they're doing it. You can do it too as a startup brand. Okay. And then the last thing is going investing into the systems that will help you with the personalization aspect and understanding what that means for your brand. Okay. So those are just my top things and anecdotes in reference of some of the trends we're seeing respectfully in the beauty space. And so now I want to shift gears to talk about what are some of the top trends we're going to see respectfully in the packaging industry here in 2026. Now, packaging is very broad, and packaging is over $1 trillion business just here in the USA. And so there is no way for me to cover every single industry. However, my focus that I really highlight on for packaging is respectfully in the beauty or the personal care space. So we're going to highlight those top trends that we're seeing in packaging for the 2026 year. And then also check the show notes because it will give a great recap of what we saw in some of the trends respectfully in 2025. And so, as I mentioned, MoCRA, which is the Modernization of Cosmetic Regulations Act, is definitely in place for the beauty industry. Then we also have Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, which is putting the financial responsibility on the brands based upon the end of life use. And so we're having to think about packaging from a different lens now because one, here in the US, with just these two regulations in place, MoCRA and extended producer responsibility, all states are different and the requirements are different for packaging. And so we're having to be very conscious and intentional to understand where a product is going to be sold at when we're working with brands. What are the regulations impact? What are the regulations that are currently in place? What is the impact it means to the brands? What are some of the non-negotiables the brands have to make in order to comply with the different regulations that are in place? When I say we are spiraling, as service providers, but we're staying on top of it because there's so much to consider. And that impacts the packaging that is being executed for the brands as well. And so, with some of the packaging trends for the 2026 year, the first one that I'm going to talk about is the mono-material designs. And this really ties into the extended producer responsibility regulation, EPR, that we're seeing. And so in 2026, sustainability becomes a compliance priority in the US because states are activating EPR, extended producer responsibility laws, that makes brands responsible for packaging waste. So beauty and CPG brands are accelerating shifts towards mono-material designs, refills, reuse systems, lightweight formats, and packaging that can be within the circular economy. And so I'm going to link some different reports from you all from Myers that shows the rising demand of recyclable packaging and low impact packaging as well. But a lot of this is really driven based upon EPR. And so the biggest thing I highly recommend everybody, regardless of scale of brand, to consider is to connect with the Circular Action Alliance because they are the ones that are helping organizations be compliant within the EPR space. And they're also helping to track, which states are actually passing the laws in reference of extended producer responsibility. At the time of this recording, there's only 7 states that have passed legislation around extended producer responsibility, and we have 50 states. So there's still a lot to consider. And even with the 7 states that have passed new legislation, there are differences for every state. So there's a lot of things we have to consider. And so that's why a lot of brands are now going to mono-material designs as part of the sustainability initiatives for their organization, but also how to get ahead of the EPR laws and regulations that are coming down the pipeline. And so I did talk about some aspects around sustainability with some of my prior Powerhouse guests. Their episodes are down in the show notes for you all because at the end of the day, we want to look at the data to see how it's going to help us with driving decisions and what the cost impact could be as well. So Michael Houston talked about that. Dustin Smith talked about that, on some of the prior episodes. So check those out down in the show notes as well to get more in depth around how sustainability and data helps drive decisions. And that ties into the monomaterial designs that are being used as part of sustainable packaging. So, second trend that we're starting to see in the packaging space is inclusive and accessible packaging. So, it's funny because some companies have already been moving towards accessible or inclusive packaging. Like with Rare Beauty, they're a color cosmetic line. The founder is Selena Gomez, and she actually worked with a dedicated team to make sure that her packaging, like for the lip glosses and the makeup componentry, was accessible. And so they actually changed the caps on their componentry to make it accessible, but still have the premium aesthetics that can coexist with each other with the aeronomical design. And so accessibility is moving from just being a side project, I'm saying that in quotes, to being a standard. And we're seeing rapid growths about it. If you've been involved with Institute of Packaging Professionals, some of their actual when they get engaged with students, that's one of the requirements is how they focus on accessibility within the packaging to be inclusive. And seeing some of the brilliant designs that the students are coming up with, is truly inspiring. And it's also letting us know that we still have a ways to go um, universally across all of our packaging to be very intentional about the accessible packaging and how it is inclusive, of all different users alike. So this is something that we're going to continue to see. And I think this is also going to help us move to be more, instead of be strictly driven based upon aesthetics first, to be looking at it more from a human-centered responsibility first, to make sure that we're being inclusive and making sure everything is accessible for all users, to then see how to incorporate the pretty aesthetics into the mix on, further down the road. So I think it's a really great job that we're seeing, this traction into the marketplace. And as part of accessible packaging, how is it going to comply with the EPR regulations that are now state mandated? But we're seeing this on a national level. So a lot of things we have to consider. And that's why you need the stakeholder team to come to the table and be part of your advising team as well. So the next trend that we're seeing here for the packaging trends in 2026 is smart connected and AI boosted packaging. So from QR codes to NFCs to AR layers, packaging in 2026 is becoming the digital passport. And so smart packs unlock tutorials, traceability, loyalty rewards, brand storytelling, and also offering valuable consumer insights. And so agencies are enabling AI packaging data to help drive smarter replenishment, personalization, the keyword that I talked about earlier, and future new product development decisions. And so, one thing I would say is we actually have been using connected packaging for quite some time. And thanks to the pandemic, we started incorporating more QR codes onto the packaging to help with driving that, so that way when consumers receive the product, they unbox it, do a whole unbox experience, leveraging those social platforms, like I talked about earlier with the beauty trends and the increase of the social platforms as well. But as part of that, QR codes would then take the consumer from just receiving the product and throwing away the packaging. I hate to say that, even though that's my lane in my industry. I don't want anybody to throw away the packaging. However, that is the reality. But how are you keeping the consumer in your pipeline and keeping them engaged and excited after they receive the product? However, with that, we're now seeing how to incorporate NFCs and AR layers and more. And so, with that being mentioned, I have a great podcast that I talked about with two industry powerhouses, where we talk about how connected packaging shapes sustainability and traceability to be your digital packaging passport. And so, as part of that, check that out. The link is down in the show notes, but we're going to continue to see this incorporated ongoing because now with e-commerce still having the boom, excuse me, still having an increase of, you know, shopping of shoppers purchasing their products there, greater than physical retail, that lets us know that we still need to have that connected packaging. So whether it is e-commerce, whether it is in a physical retail location, you need to make sure that you're connecting with your end consumer ongoing and keeping them within your circular ecosystem as well. So that is going to be ongoing. And so the next thing I've been talking about this word quite a bit is the rise of personalization within packaging through eco luxury and sensory storytelling. So before I mention this, I want to say something really quick. Packaging has always been a sensory experience, from the view, the look of it, to the touch or the tactile feel of it, to the unboxing. So you have the sound of it and more. And so that is part of it. And so to go a step further now into 2026 is we're really looking at how to meet the sensory experience and the delight in design with sustainability. And so now, since we have to comply with extended producer responsibility regulations, we're now looking at how we can incorporate more responsibly sourced materials such as glass, but then we have to look at what is the carbon emissions output, how we incorporate aluminum. Same thing. How do we incorporate that? And how do we think about the transit of glass and aluminum, which is heavier? And also aluminum, where we're currently sourcing a lot of our aluminum from Canada, we have tariffs. So is it making sense? I'm now looking at monomaterial PCR, textured papers, embossing elements, soft touch finishes, sculpture forms, and more to create that premium packaging aesthetic, but also being conscious of sustainability as well. So that's where the personalization is coming into effect. And so Gen Z Focus Trend reports that this is really the quote glower. And it's funny how we always have these words and terms come back around. But, anyways, I'm going to just read you what they say. So, the glow up era, which is collectible, display worthy packaging, featuring limited runs, artist collaboration, digital customization, and objects designed to live beyond first use. So there's numerous brands that I think of that have this glow up packaging, like Sacred, they're packaging is very statuesque and you can keep it on your countertop so it looks so it's premium, it's luxury all the time. To even Fenty Beauty, like they do a great job where you can have their products be displayed on the counter, whether it's for the skincare collection, the color cosmetics, or their hair care collection. It can all live on your countertop space and it's something vibrant, pretty to look at. There's so many other brands that do this glow up era. So while the Gen Z, I get where you're coming from, and this, like I said, these are trends, but I'm also give it to you raw and add my own anecdotes. And perspective into this is we've been seeing this. This is not something new that I'm saying in quotes. This is something that we've been seeing. However, we're seeing a lot more trends being generated by the Gen Z because of they are the upcoming the upcoming generation that is really driving a lot of purchasing decision and influences on social media too. They're calling this the glow up era. So I guess for us who we've been here, I guess we not part of glow up era. But anyways, I think we helped them glow up, to be honest. But nevertheless, we can talk about that for another day. But that's what they're saying. So you can check out the reports that are down in the show notes for you all to learn more about this glow up era as part of the rise in personalization. So the last trend I'll talk about is the refillable and the closed loop systems as a standard consideration. So mass market sustainability has always been about refill, reuse, and also reducing packaging. And now with us thinking about this glow up era that I just mentioned around personalized packaging and things that can be display worthy on your shelves, how do we be very intentional to think about the premium aesthetics, the countertop display, and also thinking about the closed loop systems. So if something is being kept for packaging, that's great, but how are we informing the consumers on how to repurpose the packaging that they do have displayed on their shelves? Are there refill bags being offered for the products that are available once the products are done out the first packaging that's displayed on the counter? How are we thinking about, recyclability of the packaging? Do we have systems in place and things that are readily available outside of curbside recycling that can help with making sure the packaging is going back into that closed loop system, the circular economy system? How are we thinking about those things? And if it's a mono material, is it of the proper size to be sorted properly for recyclability? A lot of questions to be asked, right? And things that we must consider because how we recycle here where I live, which is Atlanta, Georgia, ATL, Southern Girl to my core, versus how we recycle from New York, still on the East Coast, to how we recycle in Florida, to how we recycle in California. There's all differences. So there is no universal or uniform way of recycling the content for the brands. And so this is something that we really have to think about, when we're looking at refill options. And this is something to really be intentional and have those really dynamic conversations with your packaging suppliers and manufacturers is one, understanding what does sustainability mean to you all? How does the refill movement align with your core initiatives as a brand? How are the manufacturers offering and thinking about sustainability? What are the transit costs? Because just because you put something in glass and aluminum, this is more for my startup brands, just because it's considered sustainable packaging, it may not be sustainable for shipping, because of tariff costs, because of the weight of the products or the packaging, it's heavier, which then has increased transit costs because things are shipped based upon weight and the dimensions. So there's a lot of things to consider. So have those intentional conversations with your suppliers, with your manufacturers, with your advisory team, as well, your stakeholder team, to see what makes sense. And so if you check out the recap that I did previously from last year when I attended Makeup in New York, I did a segment on packaging and sustainability. So I had an opportunity to connect with some brands there. But one brand specifically, APC Packaging, they talked about, their patented monomaterial droppers, their refill systems, their smart packaging, and different packaging options that are available from startup brands to high scale, well known brands as well. So things to consider as well. But these are the recaps and the trends that we're seeing respectfully in 2026 for the beauty industry as a whole, and also for packaging. And so I want to ask you this question as we're in this new year space is what trends are you seeing? And what is one trend that really stood out to you from this segment that you would really focus on for yourself and or for your company? reply back and let us know, your thoughts. I would love to have this conversation with you, and also maybe even see if we can get you on the podcast so we can have that dialogue as well, more in depth dialogue as well. For our other viewers and listeners to hear different perspectives on as well. So I hope this was helpful to highlight some of the trends. I'm excited for some in transparency is we've been seeing this and we've been trending to this, so I'm not surprised based upon what the trends are, to be honest. I don't see It's not a major shift of what we've been seeing from 2025 to 2026 in transparency. There are some minor nuances that have been updated according to this. But overall, these are still good trends. We are seeing the shift. We are seeing increases, across different trends that I mentioned. But overall, I'm not surprised by the trends because we've been trending to a lot of these things, but now it's just becoming more well known and wide scale. So that's why I want to know which trends stood out to you and what are your thoughts around the trends that I mentioned and what are some other trends you're seeing so we can have the conversation? So, with that being mentioned, we will conclude for today's segment here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse. I am your show host, Megan Young Gamble. Happy New Year. This is going to be a prosperous year for all of us. And, like I mentioned, it's a new year, but it's still the same me and the same impact we're delivering here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse, which is to deliver consistent industry content to help you make informed decisions for the products and the packaging that you invest in and or purchase. So with that being mentioned, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes. We have some awesome content that is dropping here, and we're going to be continuing on of what to see in the 2026 year in the upcoming episodes. So make sure you hit that bell notification so you do not miss it. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the house in our future episodes.